So what about teaching online? We're going to spend just a few minutes about what is it like to teach fully online. And some of this may feel like a repeat of some of the things we covered earlier about general teaching, and the short answer is yes, that's not surprising, because teaching online, fully online, is very much like teaching face-to-face and doing it successfully. This may be a dated slide, but it's still a relevant slide. As far back as 2014, there had been over 7 million students who had taken at least one fully online course. And since the COVID experience of 2020 and going forward, I imagine that number is probably triple that. Who knows how much? Virtually every student has taken at least one fully online course, and I'm sure many of you have as well. So being able to teach a fully online course effectively is extremely important. Here at the University of Memphis, fully online is a core essential aspect of how we're serving the community in Memphis and students globally. For example, FedEx has a large hub here and multiple locations in the United States and elsewhere. And we have partnered, our university has partnered with FedEx to offer free tuition to anyone that works at any of those FedEx hubs, but they do need to be online students. And you can see this announcement from 2018, and I know that this has been very successful for the university in terms of reaching people who might not otherwise think about finishing a college degree, starting or finishing one. So when you create a fully online course, what are some attributes of it? Again, you want to be consistent in the way you present stuff, and you want to be organized. You want to give them a variety of things to do and a variety of ways of presenting material. Remember we talked about don't be boring. Well, it's the same way here. Don't be boring. Again, make sure it's relevant. Make sure that the material you put in front of them is something they can connect to. They can feel it, they can experience it. So the more relevant it is, the more likely they are to engage with it. Another thing to think about in online is making sure that there's a good prioritization of what is important and what's unimportant. In an online space, you have almost an infinite opportunity to present material to the students. Make sure they know what's important and what to work on. So these are just a handful of many important design elements, but these are kind of the core ones to think about in a fully online class. Another thing to think about when you're designing a fully online class is to be consistent. This is kind of connects to that organized and organized structure that we've talked about. Make sure that the way you display your material is consistently intuitive to them. Maybe use some regularity in how you organize it. Also in terms of how you communicate. You might want to do weekly emails to reinforce stuff that you've posted in the course. Maybe on that home page, have some consistency. Where do you give them instructions when they get into the meat of the course? Where do they go find stuff? Because you don't want them wandering lost. The last thing you want is a student who can't find an important assignment or find a material that you need for them to review. When you finish posting grades, send announcements out. They won't necessarily know to go and look, although some reminders are pushed out. But whatever you do, be consistent, and that will help the students know what to do and when to do it, and where to go find stuff. Another thing that's important to think about in a fully online class is to add variety. Keep it interesting for them. Give them a variety of different content types. Sometimes you have fact-based stuff that they work on, and sometimes it's things that they have to process. So sometimes they're memorizing facts and terms and concepts, and other times you're asking them to think about and process material. So kind of switch between those different thinking modes for the students. What kind of format are you going to use? Are they going to be self-directed, or are you going to do something synchronous? And by synchronous, we mean at the same time. So maybe they do everything. Maybe you have a Zoom meeting or a virtual classroom meeting for an hour once a week. Other things they may do on their own time. So you give them homework, maybe you give them some projects, but kind of move back and forth, change things up. Keep it interesting. That's just part of variety. Give them a role in what they learn where you can. Maybe you give 3 different case studies and let them pick out the one that's most interesting to them. Whatever it is, give them some role in their learning, and they're more likely to engage in it and do an excellent job. Sometimes I even let my students write in first person. I've already said that before, but it's a great way to change the voice from scholarly third person to I felt this, or I saw that, or I experienced the material this way. And that's a great way for students to process material at a very individual and personal level. And as I noted at the bottom of the slide here, sometimes you might even want to surprise them in some way, really mix things up. Keeps them interested. Another good thing to think about in making your online course excellent is to keep it relevant. Make sure that it's pertinent to their lives. And if it is pertinent, then they're more likely to engage in whatever you're asking them to do or whatever you're asking them to process. You might have them do assignments that draw on their professional or personal lives. You might try connecting to issues in the news. You might even draw questions out of the current contemporary news and put it in front of the students and ask them to think about it. And as we note at the bottom of the slide down here, if the subject matter is interesting, it's easy to keep them motivated. And this goes all the way back to the beginning of this discussion. You want these students to be engaged and connected to the learning experience, and they'll be successful. So when you're teaching online, creating engagement is a little tricky, or some people may think it is, but there are all sorts of different ways that you can create engagement in an online course. And here's just a screen where I pointed out some. If you go to the University of Illinois online website, this site is probably still up and running, or you can just Google online engagement and find whatever examples you want. But each of these are examples of things you can do. For example, you see on the bottom right, there's an arrow pointing to scavenger hunt. I do that on almost all my courses as a way to get things started. Is I have the students search through the course to find things, and I ask them to answer certain questions, helps them get started. They know where the course materials are, and it gets them off on the right foot. So play around and explore and come up with ideas of engagement. So I've reached the end of this session on teaching and learning. I hope it was interesting to you. I want you to be super teachers. I want you to go out and have a great time and come back and review any of this material you want. Or if you like, you can track me down over in the Fogelman College of Business. You can just find me on the campus white pages, and I'll be happy to chat with you or respond to an email. I hope you have a great time as a teacher this year.